ICE federal warrant. Step off the porch. Hands up.
What is going on?
Drop the case now. Hands.
Wait,
Do it.
Wait, hey!
Turn around. Behind your back.
You're hurting me!
Stop resisting.
ICE Agent Robert Kane walked into career annihilation at exactly 10:58 a.m. on Thursday morning when he pulled up to Congresswoman Miranda Blake's house with 3 agents, an anonymous tip that wouldn't pass a middle school civics test, and 16 years of experience, arresting people of color without consequences. 47 illegal arrests based on racial profiling and fabricated justification, not once facing disciplinary action for destroying innocent people's lives. Kane ordered Miranda to put her hands behind her back, and when the 51-year-old black congresswoman refused and demanded a warrant, he grabbed her, twisted her arm behind her back at a painful angle, and physically forced a sitting member of the United States Congress into handcuffs in her own driveway, while she screamed that he was committing federal crimes. What Kane didn't know was that 4 4K security cameras with audio were recording every frame, every illegal threat, every unconstitutional action, uploading to the cloud in real time. Ironclad evidence that would send all 4 agents to federal prison for 5 years, obliterate their careers, and prove that no amount of arrogance can save you when your crimes are documented by technology you forgot existed. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to smash that subscribe button for more stories you don't want to miss. Miranda Blake, 51, had represented Virginia's 8th Congressional District for 8 years, building her reputation on immigration reform and relentless advocacy for civil rights. Her legislation to increase oversight of immigration enforcement had made her enemies within ICE, agents who resented her scrutiny and wanted her silenced. That Thursday morning started routine. She'd been up since 6 a.m., went for a run, showered, and was gathering her briefcase for committee meetings on Capitol Hill. Her husband David had already left for his law firm. Her 2 adult children were away at college. She was alone. The security system she'd installed after receiving threats from extremist groups covered every angle. 4 exterior cameras, recording in 4K with audio, all uploading to secure cloud storage every 30 seconds. When the black SUV with government plates turned into her driveway at 10:58 a.m., Miranda glanced out her kitchen window, assuming it was a constituent. She stepped out of her front door at 11:02 a.m., briefcase in hand, dressed in a navy blue suit and heels. 4 ICE agents were climbing out of the SUV. Kane stepped forward first, his expression already hostile, with Agent Marcus Sullivan flanking left, younger but equally aggressive. Agent Diana Foster moved right, 7 years with ICE, having taught her to follow orders without question, while Agent Kevin Park hung back, only 2 years in, but already shaped by the culture of impunity. The driveway camera captured Miranda stopping at the top of her porch steps as the agents spread out in tactical formation. "Ma'am, stop right there. Don't move," Kane called out. Miranda's hand tightened on her briefcase. "Excuse me. This is my house. Who are you?" Kane pulled out his badge, holding it up, but not close enough to read. "Immigration and Customs Enforcement. We need you to come with us for questioning." "About what?" "I'm Congresswoman Miranda Blake. You're in my driveway. Do you have a warrant?" "We don't need one," Kane said, moving closer. "We have authority under federal immigration law to question individuals suspected of harboring or assisting illegal aliens." The camera captured Miranda's face, shock mixing with controlled anger. "Suspected by whom? On what basis? You can't just show up at a congresswoman's home without a warrant." Sullivan moved to flank her left, cutting off retreat into the house. "Ma'am, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. You can cooperate, or we can detain you for obstruction." Miranda pulled her phone from her jacket. "I'm calling my lawyer." Foster stepped forward. "Put the phone down, ma'am. You're not calling anyone until we've completed our investigation." "Investigation of what?" Miranda's voice rose. "You show up at my home, refuse to show me a warrant, and now you're telling me I can't call my lawyer. Do you have any idea how many federal laws you're violating right now?" Kane's face hardened, jaw tightening. The cameras caught every micro-expression. This was a man who didn't like being challenged, especially not by a black woman, congresswoman or not. "Ma'am, we have credible information that you've been harboring undocumented individuals at this residence. We're authorized to question you and search the premises." Miranda's voice went ice cold. Then show me the warrant for the search. Show me the probable cause affidavit. Show me any legal documentation that gives you the right to be on my property. Park shifted uncomfortably, the only one showing doubt, but he stayed silent. We have administrative authority that supersedes standard warrant requirements in immigration cases, Kane stated, a complete fabrication. That's not true, and you know it, Miranda shot back. I sit on the Judiciary Committee. I know immigration law better than you do. You need a warrant to search my home. You need probable cause to detain me. You have neither. Kane took another step forward, now at the base of her porch steps. Turn around, ma'am. Hands behind your back. Miranda stood her ground. I'm not doing that. You have no legal authority to arrest me. I'm ordering you to leave my property immediately. The security footage showed what happened next with brutal clarity. Kane grabbed Miranda's arm, an aggressive grab meant to control and dominate. Miranda pulled back firmly, asserting her right not to be touched. Sullivan moved in from the side, clamping onto her other arm. Miranda's briefcase fell, papers scattering across the porch. Get your hands off me, Miranda shouted. This is assault. I'm a member of Congress. Kane forced her arm behind her back at a painful angle. Miranda cried out. Foster moved in to help restrain her while Park hung back, his face troubled, but his feet frozen. The sound of handcuffs clicking shut echoed across the street. Patricia Coleman, a neighbor 2 houses down, came running out with her phone already recording. What are you doing? That's Congresswoman Blake. Leave her alone. Kane barely turned. Ma'am, step back. This is federal business. Federal business. You're arresting a congresswoman in her own driveway. Jerome Watson appeared across the street, phone raised. Within minutes, 3 more neighbors emerged, all recording, all witnessing. Miranda, now in handcuffs, kept her voice steady despite the pain. You are all making the biggest mistake of your careers. Every one of you. This is being recorded. Your badges, your faces, every illegal action. When this goes to trial, every second of this footage will be used against you. Kane gripped her arm tighter and marched her toward the SUV. Sullivan opened the back door. They pushed Miranda inside, her head nearly hitting the frame. Before they closed the door, Miranda spoke clearly for every camera. My name is Congresswoman Miranda Blake, United States House of Representatives, Virginia's 8th District. I am being illegally detained by ICE agents who have no warrant, no probable cause, and no legal authority. The time is approximately 11:15 a.m. I am being taken against my will. I have committed no crime. Kane slammed the door shut. The SUV backed out at 11:17 a.m. 19 minutes that destroyed 4 careers. Patricia was already on the phone with 911. Jerome was texting Miranda's chief of staff, Lucas Rivera. Other neighbors uploaded videos to social media. ICE had just arrested our congresswoman. Within 20 minutes, the footage was everywhere. Local news, then national outlets. Cable news on loop. Social media exploding. Millions of views in the first hour. Lucas saw the texts in his Capitol Hill office and immediately called the Speaker of the House, the House Majority Leader, and Elizabeth Morgan, Miranda's attorney, a civil rights lawyer with 30 years of experience destroying corrupt officials in court. Morgan was in federal court when she got the call. She walked out, already making calls to the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division, the FBI, the House General Counsel. This wasn't just another case. This was the kind of violation that changed laws, set precedents, and sent messages to every federal agent in America about what happens when you forget the Constitution applies to you too. At the ICE field office in Arlington, Kane and his team brought Miranda into an interrogation room at 11:52 a.m., confident they had control of the situation. The room had cameras controlled by ICE, which meant Kane thought he could control the narrative. What he didn't know was that Miranda's phone, still in her jacket pocket, had automatically started recording audio when she triggered the emergency function before they grabbed her. Kane sat across from Miranda at a metal table while Sullivan stood behind him with his arms crossed. Foster and Park waited outside, their role in the illegal arrest apparently complete. Kane leaned forward with the posture of a man who had done this hundreds of times before. Congresswoman, Kane began, his tone mocking the title. We have information that you've been harboring undocumented workers in your home. We need to know who they are and where they are now." Miranda met his eyes without flinching. "I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent and my Sixth Amendment right to an attorney. I will not answer any questions without my lawyer present." Kane leaned back, a smirk crossing his face. "That's going to make things harder for you, is it?" Miranda asked. "Because from where I'm sitting, you've already committed multiple federal crimes: false arrest, kidnapping under color of law, deprivation of civil rights, assault. You think invoking my constitutional rights makes things harder for me?" Sullivan slammed his hand on the table. "You think your position protects you? You think because you're in Congress, you can break the law?" Miranda kept her eyes on Kane. "What law did I break? Name one. Show me one shred of evidence that I've done anything illegal." Kane pulled out a folder and opened it on the table with the confidence of a man about to reveal damning evidence. But when Miranda looked down, she almost laughed. There was a single page inside containing a vague anonymous tip that claimed someone had seen suspicious activity at her address. No names, no dates, no specific allegations, nothing that would constitute probable cause for a traffic stop, let alone the arrest of a sitting congresswoman. "This is your evidence?" Miranda asked. "An anonymous tip with no specifics? That's what you use to justify arresting a sitting congresswoman?" Kane's face flushed red. "We have multiple reports of individuals matching the description of undocumented workers entering and leaving your residence over the past several months." "Then show me those reports," Miranda demanded. "Show me the surveillance photos. Show me the witness statements. Show me anything that isn't a single anonymous tip." The door burst open before Kane could respond. Deputy Director Amanda Morrison entered with 2 federal agents from a different agency, and her expression made it clear that Kane's world was about to collapse. Morrison was a 20-year veteran who had risen through the ranks by following the law and holding her agents accountable. "Kane, Sullivan, out. Now," Morrison said, her voice tight with fury. Kane stood slowly, trying to maintain some dignity. "Ma'am, we're in the middle of an interrogation of a suspect who—" "Get out of this room right now before I have you physically removed," Morrison interrupted. "You just arrested a sitting member of the United States Congress without a warrant, without probable cause, and without a single functioning brain cell between the 4 of you. Do you have any idea what you've done?" The interrogation ended at that moment. Miranda was immediately uncuffed, and Morrison personally apologized while explaining that Miranda was free to leave. By the time Miranda walked out at 12:03 p.m., exactly 1 hour after her arrest, Elizabeth Morgan was already there with Lucas Rivera and a representative from the Speaker's office. The drive back to Miranda's house was tense. Morgan was on her phone coordinating with the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division, with the House General Counsel, with every person who needed to know that federal agents had just committed career suicide on camera. When they pulled into Miranda's driveway at 12:41 p.m., news vans were already lining the street. The footage from the security cameras had been released by Miranda's team, and every network was running it on loop. A congresswoman in a business suit being handcuffed in her own driveway. Papers scattered across her porch. Neighbors filming and protesting. Agents manhandling her into an SUV. It was visual evidence of everything wrong with unchecked federal authority. Miranda stood on her porch and gave a statement to the cameras. "This morning, 4 ICE agents came to my home without a warrant, without probable cause, and without legal authority. They arrested me in my driveway, handcuffed me, and took me to a detention facility for interrogation. I committed no crime. I violated no law. I was targeted because of my work holding ICE accountable for civil rights violations." She paused, letting that sink in. "What happened to me this morning is what happens to countless people every day. People who don't have cameras, who don't have lawyers on speed dial, who don't have the protection of congressional office. The difference is I have the resources to fight back, and I will fight back, not just for myself, but for every person who's been illegally detained. Every family that's been torn apart, every community that's been terrorized by agents who think their badges put them above the law." The Justice Department opened a criminal investigation that afternoon. The FBI seized the agent's service weapons, badges, and credentials. By 5 p.m., all 4 were placed on administrative leave. By 6 p.m., the security footage had become the cornerstone of what would be one of the most significant civil rights prosecutions in recent history. The evidence was overwhelming. Multiple cameras from multiple angles with clear audio and timestamps. Neighbor cell phone videos that corroborated every detail. Audio from Miranda's phone that captured the interrogation. Every illegal action, every constitutional violation, every moment of Kane's arrogance, all documented in a format that couldn't be disputed or explained away. Kane had fabricated justification for the arrest. Sullivan had participated in the assault. Foster had aided and abetted. Park had stood by and done nothing, making him complicit under federal law. All 4 had violated their oaths, betrayed their badges, and committed serious federal crimes while believing they would face no consequences because they never had before. The charges came down 6 weeks later, and they were devastating. The federal grand jury indicted all 4 agents on multiple counts. Deprivation of rights under color of law, a federal felony, carrying up to 10 years in prison, conspiracy to violate civil rights, kidnapping, false imprisonment, and assault. The indictment was 47 pages long, and every page detailed another layer of Kane's pattern of abuse that investigators had uncovered once they started digging into his career. The trial began 3 months after the arrest, and from the opening statements, it was clear this wasn't going to be a close case. The prosecution had video evidence that made their job almost effortless. The security footage played on screens throughout the courtroom, and the jury watched in silence as Kane grabbed Miranda, as Sullivan flanked her, as they forced a congresswoman into handcuffs while she invoked her rights and identified herself. The footage was damning in a way that left no room for interpretation or excuse. Kane's attorney tried to argue that he'd been acting in good faith based on the anonymous tip, that he believed he had authority to make the arrest, that this was all a tragic misunderstanding, but the cross-examination destroyed him in a way that was almost painful to watch. Agent Kane, when Congresswoman Blake told you she was a member of Congress, what did you think? The prosecutor asked, standing directly in front of the witness stand. Kane shifted in his seat, his suit looking too tight around his neck. I thought she was trying to use her position to avoid questioning. Did you verify her identity? No. Why not? Kane hesitated, knowing whatever he said next would be used against him. I didn't think it mattered. You didn't think it mattered that you might be arresting a United States Congresswoman? She looked like the other people we typically deal with. The courtroom went completely silent. Even Kane's attorney closed his eyes, knowing his client had just buried himself. The prosecutor let that statement hang in the air for a long moment, letting every juror absorb what they'd just heard. What do you mean she looked like the other people you typically deal with? The prosecutor asked, his voice quiet but cutting. Kane realized his mistake too late. I mean, I didn't recognize her. You mean she was a black woman? So you assumed she must be involved in immigration violations, didn't you? No, that's not what I meant. Agent Kane, in your 16-year career, how many white people have you arrested for harboring undocumented immigrants? Kane's lawyer objected, but the judge overruled it. Kane sat there, his face red, his hands gripping the armrests of the witness stand. I don't keep track of race. The prosecutor walked back to his table and picked up a document. I'll answer for you. According to ICE records, 0. You've arrested 47 people for harboring or assisting undocumented immigrants in your career. All 47 were people of color. All 47. Is that a coincidence? Kane had no answer. He sat there in silence while the prosecutor let the jury absorb the numbers. 47 arrests. 0 white people. A pattern so clear it couldn't be explained away as anything other than what it was. Sullivan's testimony was somehow worse. He admitted under oath that he knew the arrest was questionable from the moment Miranda identified herself as a congresswoman. He admitted he'd grabbed her roughly and heard her invoke her constitutional rights, but chose to ignore them. When asked why he participated in an arrest he knew was illegal, Sullivan said he was following Kane's lead because Kane was the senior agent and he didn't want to undermine his authority in front of a suspect. So you violated a congresswoman's constitutional rights because you didn't want to embarrass your colleague? The prosecutor asked. Sullivan nodded, then realized he needed to speak for the record. Yes. Foster broke down on the stand completely. She testified that she'd known the arrest was wrong from the beginning, but was afraid of retaliation from Kane, who had a reputation for destroying the careers of agents who questioned him. She described a culture within their unit where aggressive tactics were encouraged, where complaints were ignored, where targeting people of color was so normalized that nobody even questioned it anymore. In exchange for her cooperation and testimony against Kane and Sullivan, the prosecution offered her a reduced sentence, which she accepted immediately. Park's testimony proved to be the most damaging to the defense. On the stand, he described in detail the culture Kane had created within their unit. He testified about how Kane specifically targeted people of color, how he fabricated justifications for arrests, how he coached younger agents to be aggressive and dismissive of civil rights concerns. Park admitted he should have stopped the arrest, that he knew it was illegal, but he was afraid that speaking up would end his career before it really started. Did you receive any training on congressional immunity? The prosecutor asked. Yes, Park said. We were specifically trained that members of Congress have certain protections and that any interaction with them requires supervisor approval and proper legal authority. And did Agent Kane seek supervisor approval before arresting Congresswoman Blake? No. Did he have proper legal authority? No. Did you tell him that? Park's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. No. I didn't say anything. The defense tried to argue they'd been following protocols, but the prosecution brought in ICE's own training manuals and legal experts who testified that everything about the arrest violated standard procedure. They brought in former ICE agents who looked at the video footage and said they'd never seen such a clear-cut case of an illegal arrest. Deputy Director Morrison testified that when she learned about the arrest, she immediately knew it was illegal and indefensible. She described rushing to the field office and finding Kane in the interrogation room, still trying to question Miranda, despite her having invoked her right to an attorney. Morrison testified that Kane showed no remorse, no understanding that he'd done anything wrong, and seemed genuinely surprised that there would be consequences. Miranda herself took the stand on the 5th day of trial. She walked the jury through her mourning, explained her work on immigration reform, and why it had made her a target for agents like Kane, and described in calm, clear language what it felt like to be arrested in her own driveway by federal agents who refused to follow the law. She showed the jury the bruises on her wrists from the handcuffs and the medical report documenting the injury to her shoulder from how Kane had twisted her arm. I kept thinking about all the people this has happened to, who don't have what I have, Miranda testified. People who get arrested by agents like Kane and have no cameras, no lawyers, no congressional office to protect them. How many people has he done this to who couldn't fight back? The answer came during the prosecution's investigation. They'd gone back through Kane's entire career and found dozens of questionable arrests, complaints that had been ignored, allegations of excessive force that had been buried. They found people Kane had arrested who'd spent months in detention before being released because there was no case against them. They found families he'd torn apart based on anonymous tips that turned out to be false. They found a pattern of abuse stretching back years, enabled by a system that looked the other way. The jury deliberated for 9 hours. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous on all counts for all 4 defendants. Guilty. The word echoed through the courtroom 4 times as the judge read each agent's verdict. Kane sat stone-faced, but his hands were shaking. Sullivan stared at the table. Foster cried quietly. Park closed his eyes. The sentencing hearing came 2 weeks later. The courtroom was packed with media, with civil rights advocates, with people who'd been victimized by Kane over the years. Miranda sat in the front row with her husband and children. Judge Vanessa Richardson, a black woman who'd served on the federal bench for 20 years, read the verdicts and then delivered a statement that would be quoted in law schools and civil rights discussions for years afterward. The defendants in this case committed one of the most egregious violations of civil rights I have seen in my time on this bench. They arrested a sitting congresswoman without a warrant, without cause and without regard for the law they swore to uphold. But this case is about more than Congresswoman Blake. It's about every person who has been illegally detained by agents who believe their authority is absolute. The evidence shows a pattern of racial targeting, of constitutional violations, of an institutional culture that enabled and encouraged this behavior. The sentence must reflect not only the severity of the crime, but the need to send a clear message that no badge, no uniform, no federal authority places anyone above the law. Robert Kane received 5 years in federal prison. Marcus Sullivan received 4 years. Diana Foster, who'd cooperated, received 2 years. Kevin Park received 3 years of probation and was barred from federal law enforcement for life. Their careers were obliterated, their pensions forfeited, their names forever associated with one of the clearest cases of civil rights violations in federal law enforcement history. The civil lawsuit came 3 months after the criminal sentencing, and Miranda sued the agents personally, and ICE as an agency. The settlement was confidential, but sources close to this case suggested it was substantial, with every dollar going to organizations that provided legal defense for immigrants and families facing deportation. Miranda didn't keep a cent for herself. This was never about money. It was about sending a message that couldn't be ignored. ICE implemented changes in the aftermath, though whether they were meaningful remained to be seen. New training on congressional immunity, new protocols for arrests, new oversight mechanisms. But the culture that had enabled Kane and his team didn't disappear overnight. The difference now was that every agent knew what happened when you forgot that badges don't put you above the law. Kane began serving his sentence in a federal facility in Pennsylvania, Sullivan in Kentucky, Foster in a women's facility in West Virginia. They would serve at least 85% of their sentences before being eligible for release. Their careers were over, their reputations destroyed, their futures reduced to whatever life they could build after federal prison. Park completed his probation working as a warehouse supervisor, his law enforcement career over before it really began. Miranda continued her work in Congress with renewed determination. She introduced legislation to strengthen protections against illegal detention, to increase penalties for federal agents who violated civil rights, to create independent oversight of immigration enforcement. Her security cameras stayed up, still recording, still backing up to the cloud every 30 seconds. A reminder that in an age where everything can be documented, the truth has a way of coming to light. The neighbors who'd recorded that Thursday morning became part of the story too. Patricia Coleman spoke at community meetings about the importance of witnessing, of recording, of not staying silent when you see injustice. Jerome Watson kept a copy of his video on his phone, showing it to anyone who questioned whether illegal arrests really happened to people like Congresswomen. The house where it happened became something of a landmark. Miranda used it as a teaching tool, inviting groups to her home, showing them the security footage, walking them through what happened, explaining why it mattered. She turned her driveway into a classroom about civil rights, about the Fourth Amendment, about why accountability matters. Years later, when asked if she'd forgiven the agents, Miranda's answer was carefully considered. Forgiveness is personal, and I'm still working on that. But accountability isn't about forgiveness. It's about ensuring this doesn't happen again. Those 4 agents are in prison, not because I'm vindictive, but because they committed serious federal crimes. The sentence they're serving is a message to every federal agent that the law applies to you too. The security footage is still online, still being watched, still being used in training sessions about what not to do. 4 cameras captured 98 minutes of footage that day, 98 minutes that destroyed 4 careers, sent 4 people to federal prison, and proved that even federal agents with years of unchecked authority can face consequences when their crimes are captured in 4K and uploaded to the cloud before they realize what's happening. Sometimes justice is complicated and hard to achieve, but sometimes it's crystal clear, captured in multiple camera angles, backed by irrefutable evidence, and delivered by a jury who saw exactly what happened and decided that enough was enough. If this story opened your eyes to how documentation and courage can bring down even the most powerful people who think they're untouchable, share it with someone who needs to see it. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we're bringing another story that proves the truth always has a way of winning when it's caught on camera.